welcome to a new episode of Cheaters Always Cheat. Like, subscribe, and share to stay connected.
So, my ex-wife totally cut me off, removed me from all her social media accounts. But guess what? She didn't stop there. Just when I thought she was finally out of my life, well, the inevitable happened. I didn't see my wife's true nature until I lost my job for the last time. I used to hold a high-ranking position in a large corporation. My job came with a lot of benefits and a hefty paycheck. It was such that my wife, who I'd been married to for 4 years, didn't need to work. I took care of her. She was a great wife, managing the household, looking after me and my mom. My mom is quite elderly, and I decided that she should live with us instead of being sent to a nursing home, which is what my siblings wanted. I cut ties with my siblings over this issue. They didn't appreciate all that our mom had done for us to get us where we are today. Now that she's old, blind, and needs care, they wanted to put her in a home with strangers and just forget about her. I couldn't let that happen, so I brought her to live with us. As far as I knew, my wife and mom got along well. If they had any issues, I was never aware of it. If my wife had told me she was unhappy with certain aspects of her life, I would have done anything to make her feel better. When she quit her job because she didn't like it, I had no problem supporting her. Cash was never a big issue for me. I was always able to provide for my loved ones and live a comfortable life. That's why it was such a shock when I was accused of stealing money at work. The colleague I was working with was a shady character, but since he was the boss's nephew, they made me the fall guy and let me go. It didn't go on my record, and I even got some severance pay, but I was now jobless. Eventually, I found another job, but it was a significant step down from my previous position. So, my wife, who isn't fond of working, suggested she might try her hand at modeling. At 32, she still had a youthful appearance, so I didn't object. It was her decision, and as long as she was happy, I was fine with it. I attended some of her photo shoots when I could, and I could tell she was genuinely enjoying her new career. We hired a nurse to take care of my mom around the clock, and this arrangement seemed to work for us. That was, until I stumbled upon those cufflinks. I was searching for my tie one day. Enid was out on a shoot, and I didn't want to disturb her. So, I started looking on my own and came across a large box. I thought maybe she'd stashed my tie in there, along with her other things. When I opened it, I found mostly her belongings, but then I spotted a pair of cufflinks. They were from a high-end brand that was way out of my price range. She didn't have any brothers, so why would she have these pricey cufflinks? I was a bit unsettled by the discovery of a man's cufflinks among her stuff, but I figured there must be a logical explanation, and she wasn't actually being unfaithful. When she got home, I asked her about the cufflinks. She burst into laughter and said they were a gift for me. She'd forgotten to give them to me. She explained that they were given to her at a photo shoot to pass on to her husband or a friend. I felt pretty foolish for doubting her. But then my mom warned me to be cautious. She pointed out that my wife seemed to think that because she's blind, she can't hear. But my wife had been misleading me about her whereabouts when she claimed to be going to photo shoots. Since she was mostly using my car because she thought it suited her image better and I didn't see any harm in it, I decided to install a tracker in my car. Not once did my wife go anywhere near the locations she claimed to be visiting, yet she still managed to come home with money she'd supposedly earned. But she kept visiting a specific address, more than just once or twice. When I looked up the address, it turned out to belong to a photographer. I asked my 20-year-old cousin if she could dig up some more info about this photographer. As soon as she saw his photos, she recognized him. She informed me that he was quite popular among her friends for producing content for them. I was at my wit's end, feeling like I was spiraling out of control. When my cousin explained the nature of the content he produced, I felt a wave of nausea. We had agreed that her modeling would remain dignified. So why was she involved in this? Were all her other photo shoots just a cover for what she was really up to? I knew that kind of content could bring in a lot of money, but we weren't desperate for cash. Sure, we had to tighten our belts a bit, but I thought we were content. I decided to confront the photographer and demand he stop working with her. She hadn't been honest with me and hadn't considered how her actions would reflect on our family. She could have at least been upfront about what she was doing. So I went to meet the photographer. I told him about my wife and asked him to stop shooting her. His name was Raphael, and his studio was quite impressive. His work seemed tasteful, But I didn't let that sway me. Raphael didn't seem bothered by my accusations. He told me that while he did shoot that kind of content, my wife only did hand modeling and small campaigns with him. He then showed me a portfolio of her work, and I felt like a fool. I apologized for my false accusations and made my exit. But before I left, I had a strange sense of familiarity. I asked Raphael to keep our conversation from Enid, and he agreed. He said he often dealt with concerned husbands, so he understood where I was coming from. The man who escorted me out seemed familiar. Something about the studio, or maybe him, gave me a sense of déjà vu. I brushed it off as nothing. 3 days later, my wife was in a hurry to get to work and left her bag in our room. I quickly grabbed it and ran outside to catch her before she drove off. I managed to hand her the bag just in time, but when I returned to the house, I stepped on something in the driveway. I picked it up and saw that it was a positive pregnancy test. I was ecstatic. At last, we were going to be parents. I dashed inside to share the exciting news with my mother, but asked her to keep it under wraps since my wife hadn't officially shared the news with me yet. It all made sense now, her recent mood swings and the distance she'd been keeping. I felt guilty for having doubted her and decided to make it up to her by cooking dinner. I must say, I'm quite the chef, thanks to my mother's teachings. I texted her to ask when she'd be home, but my message bounced back. I checked our Wi-Fi connection, but it was working fine. Then I noticed her profile picture was missing. I tried calling her, but her number was unreachable. All her social media accounts were deactivated, and I started to worry, especially considering her delicate condition. This wasn't the first time she'd blocked me. The smallest things could set her off, leading her to deactivate her social media accounts until she felt better. On such days, she'd usually retreat to her mother's house for some rest. I'm not at liberty to disclose her exact diagnosis, but she has a personality disorder. She's managed it well over the years, but some days are tougher than others. So, as usual, I did what I do in such situations. I checked to see if she'd made it to her mom's house. Her mother was able to reassure me that she was all right, just needing some space. I felt a mix of emotions, joy from the pregnancy news, but also a hollow feeling because she wasn't there with me. Perhaps she was having doubts about the baby and didn't want me to find out. I finally went upstairs that day and was met with a stark emptiness. Her mirror, her jewelry box, all gone. Her closet was bare, not a single piece of clothing left behind. I asked my mom's nurse if she knew anything, and that's when she handed me a letter. It was from her. I read it. "Dear John, I love you, but I can't stay. I feel trapped. I need to breathe. This life isn't for me. Don't try to find me. Pretend I no longer exist. I just can't do this anymore. Goodbye." I asked the nurse to leave, and then I hit the wall so hard my knuckles started to bleed. She had vanished without a trace, carrying my unborn child. A few days later, I heard that Raphael had skipped town and run off with a woman. This made me question whether the baby was even mine. The worst part? I'll never know. Now I'm left in this house that feels more hollow with each passing day. My mom passed away a few months back, and before she left she assured me that time would mend my wounds. But it's been half a year since she disappeared. She ghosted me and hasn't reached out since. My routine is simple: go to work, come home, and drink until I black out. I don't think I'm an alcoholic, but I do think I'm battling depression. I feel utterly alone in this world. She's out there, probably happy. I still can't figure out what I did to make her cheat on me. I grapple with these questions daily. Sometimes I feel like I should disregard her wishes, track her down, and demand closure. I want her to face me and tell me it's over, not through some impersonal letter. Man, I feel so low. I guess I'm sharing all this so that someone, anyone, can understand what I'm going through. I haven't confided in any friends or family because I'm afraid of appearing weak. So, I put on a brave face, and they don't ask any questions. I need to know, is there a way, any way, I can move forward? I'm just so exhausted. I don't know what to do. Update, 2 months later. After pouring out my heart to you all, I found myself sleeping more peacefully that night. The following morning, I felt a sense of relief. I began to clean the house, discarding her belongings once and for all. In the subsequent week, I even managed to go golfing with a friend. Over these 2 months, I took small steps to reclaim my life. I also started attending weekly therapy sessions, which made me realize that I might have been dealing with a narcissist. I won't delve into the early stages of our relationship, but there were numerous red flags that I overlooked simply because I didn't want to lose her. This made me question, did my love for her morph into an obsession? I've been undertaking the most challenging task a person can do, having brutally honest conversations with myself. Through this, I've gradually started to let positivity seep back into my life. I genuinely believe that I'll be okay someday. When I revisited my previous post, I noticed that the anger and sadness I felt while writing it have started to dissipate. It's gradually fading away. I want to thank everyone for their comments and advice on moving forward. I believe I can do it. Update. A lot of positive changes have occurred in my life since then. I stopped dwelling on her and the pain she caused me, and gradually, I found my way back to life. My job performance improved, leading to a transfer and even a promotion. I now live in a serene, small, and comfortable area. It's the perfect place for me and my fiancé. Yes, you heard right. My marriage to Enid ended over a year ago. Thankfully, I didn't lose anything to her, and we both moved on. I haven't seen her in more than a year and a half, but I'm convinced that the child she was carrying wasn't mine. Why else would she run off with a photographer? Regardless, I've forgiven her, not because she deserves it, but because I'm a decent person. Now about my fiancé. I met her when she was involved in a roadside accident. The person who hit her car fled the scene, and she was running late for a meeting. I managed to memorize the license plate of the hit-and-run car. I have an excellent memory, by the way. I approached her and blurted out the license plate number before even saying hello. She gave me a bewildered look and was about to call for help when I explained that it was the license plate of the car that hit her and took off. She was incredibly grateful for my help. I stuck around while she dealt with the police and all the necessary procedures. I'm not sure what compelled me to stay and ensure she was all right. Afterwards, she invited me for a coffee, and well, the rest is history. I'm brimming with happiness these days. My mom was right. Time does indeed heal. I feel rejuvenated and haven't fallen back into my old habits for a long time. My fiancé and I are expecting a baby soon, and we're organizing a cozy wedding with our close friends and family. I'm thriving in my job and have made significant progress over the past year. The only issue is that I've been having dreams about Enid. Sometimes when I'm out, I think I catch a fleeting glimpse of her, which unnerves me. It's like I'm haunted by a specter. The dreams about her are far from pleasant, but I know better than to seek her out. She made her choice when she left me grappling with unanswered questions. She didn't even express her condolences when my mother passed away. I've worked tirelessly for everything I have. Honestly, I don't want or need her in my life. But how can I stop these dreams? I'm considering getting some sleeping pills. When I take sleeping pills, my dreams tend to fade away. I discussed this with my close friend Peter, and he suggested that dreaming about an ex might indicate some unresolved issues. But does that mean I need to track her down to figure out what's left unsettled? I'm content. I told Peter I don't need her barging into my life and wreaking havoc as she's known to do. I didn't reach this point of peace easily. Update. She's resurfaced and you won't believe what she's claiming. Well, my previous post didn't age well to say the least. I didn't seek her out. She tracked me down. Despite changing my phone number, job, and address, she managed to find me like some sort of detective. She sent me a text asking to meet, not even 2 weeks after I started having dreams about her. I had nothing to say to her, so I blocked her. She kept calling from different numbers, and my fiancée Claire started getting suspicious about the influx of calls. I had to fib and tell her that I'd accidentally signed up for a telemarketing service. I felt guilty when Claire decided to change her phone the very next day, just to give me some peace. Peter suggested that perhaps I should share the full story with her, not just the condensed version. Did I heed his advice? No, I rarely do. I should have, because Enid showed up at Claire's workplace with a kid, claiming he's mine. I was at work contemplating getting a restraining order against Enid when, lo and behold, she makes her move. Claire called me, saying a woman claiming to be my wife had shown up with a young boy, allegedly my son. Talk about impeccable timing to wreak havoc in my life once again, right? I had grieved for her and that child, mentally buried them, and now they just saunter back into my life as if nothing happened. I told Claire we'd discuss it later, then shot a text to Enid asking if she'd lost her mind. I warned her to steer clear of my fiancé. She responded saying she'd been trying to get my attention, but I'd been ignoring her. Did she really think she could just stroll back into my life and I'd welcome her with open arms? No questions asked? I was trembling. I had no idea if the child was mine. I'm still grappling with all this. Eventually, I mustered the courage to tell her we should meet and talk it out. The next day, when I got home, Claire was livid, and rightly so. She demanded to know why I hadn't told her about having a child and why I was still married to Enid. But I'm not married to her. I have no clue what she's talking about. I had no choice but to spill the beans, delve into the nitty-gritty of what transpired, and beg for her forgiveness. Claire forgave me, assuring me she'd stick by my side no matter what. I don't deserve such unwavering loyalty. I'm truly blessed to have her in my life. The following morning, I met with Enid. Claire stayed in the car while I had a chat with Enid. Seeing her for the first time in a year and a half was a jolt to my system. She's changed so drastically, it's hard to recognize her. She used to be vibrant, energetic, and passionate, but the woman standing before me looked a decade older. She reeked of cigarettes and had put on quite a bit of weight. Beside her was a young boy with wide eyes and a skinny frame. I sat down without saying a word to her and ordered something. Then I greeted her. She immediately burst into tears. Suddenly she broke down, expressing relief that I seemed to be doing well, better than she was. After she left me, she continued modeling for Raphael until her pregnancy started showing. She had no choice but to tell him she was expecting, but he wanted her to terminate the pregnancy. She refused, and he left her. From that point on, her life spiraled downwards rapidly, and she struggled to care for the baby. Then she dropped the bombshell. She wanted to get back together, just me, her, and our supposed son. Hold on a minute. Did I have gullible tattooed on my forehead? I told her I had moved on and had no interest in rekindling our relationship. Then she pulled out all the stops, resorting to manipulation tactics, like crying and blaming her mental health for her actions. I knew she believed she still had some sway over me, the kind she once had, but not anymore. Being with her was mentally exhausting. No matter how hard I tried to make her happy, it was never enough. She left me in shambles, and now she wanted to finish what she started. I told her I didn't want her back, but we still needed to conduct a DNA test on the boy. Who knows? It could be another one of her schemes to worm her way back into my life and wreak havoc. The boy looked so innocent and bewildered, a picture of sadness and confusion as he gazed up at me. I had to avert my gaze because the guilt was overwhelming. She knew this would get to me. She knew how much I yearned for a child. I rose from my seat, unable to endure this any longer. It was like reliving the darkest moments of my life, just sitting there. Then she threatened me, saying if I dared to leave, she'd ensure I'd never see my son again. I froze. I couldn't face her or anyone else. I was trembling, a cocktail of anger, fear, and a myriad of other emotions coursing through me. Then, a comforting hand rested on my shoulder, and I saw it was Claire. She reassured me that everything would be all right. She took a seat and asked Enid what she wanted. Enid demanded money, a hefty sum for child support. Claire responded, "All right, but we'll need a DNA test first, to confirm that he's indeed Ian's son." Enid told her to stay out of it, calling her sloppy seconds. Claire retorted that at least she genuinely loved me and hadn't caused me any pain. Before I could react, Enid lunged at Claire, slamming her head onto the table. She was about to cross over to the other side to finish her off, but I intervened. She started yelling and tried to attack me. I yelled at Claire to call for help. Enid's reckless actions landed her a few hours behind bars for assault, thanks to the security camera footage. In the meantime, the child was placed in foster care, but I managed to secure a court order for a DNA test. The results are due in a few days, and I'm honestly at a loss for how to feel. Claire assures me that regardless of the outcome, she'll continue to love me and accept the child. The thought of having a lifelong connection to Enid through this child is daunting. It feels like she'll always be there, looming over me like a dark cloud, no matter where I go. I don't harbor any love for her anymore. I see her for the manipulative person she truly is, and it scares me, for the sake of my wife and our unborn child. Enid always seems to have a trick up her sleeve, capable of causing havoc and escaping unscathed. So now, I need to plan for the future, to ensure our safety. Update: it's not over yet. We're about to receive the DNA results, so I'll read them out to you like a daytime talk show host. He is not the father. Here's your update. The child isn't mine. I was at a loss for words when I found out, even though it confirmed my suspicions. The child was probably Raphael's, who had promptly abandoned Enid upon learning of her pregnancy. My heart ached at the thought of her being solely responsible for that child's upbringing. So Claire and I proceeded with our assault and stalking charges against her. It wasn't difficult for the court to determine that she wasn't fit for full custody of the child. Her past was riddled with questionable activities, and it was finally catching up with her. The court conducted a thorough evaluation and concluded that she needed professional help, as she posed a risk to herself and others. I felt a deep sense of pity for the innocent boy Bryce. Despite my initial inclination to distance myself, I felt compelled to ensure his biological father at least acknowledged him. Claire and I reached out to his father, hoping he would agree to meet his son. Let's hope he responds. Update a month later. He didn't respond. In the weeks following our message, we stayed in touch with Bryce, ensuring he was in a safe environment. I often find myself wondering, if she hadn't run away, would I have raised Bryce as my own? Would I have ever met Claire? Or would she have eventually left me for a new lover? I've attempted to decipher Enid's thought process countless times, but even now, I'm still in the dark. 7 years ago, that enigma was part of her allure. I should have seen the red flags, but in a strange way, that perilous journey led me to Claire. My wife Claire and I recently tied the knot, and we're waiting for our baby to arrive before embarking on our honeymoon. It feels like we've been given a fresh start, and these past few weeks have been a honeymoon in their own right. However, our bliss has been overshadowed by responses from Raphael. His reaction was far from what I anticipated. I was bracing for anger, silence, or even acceptance. Instead, Raphael flatly denied being the child's father. He claimed to have undergone a vasectomy at the age of 20. Unless there's some medical marvel at play, he couldn't possibly be the father. His denial left me speechless, and I found myself wondering who else could be the child's father. I scoured his social media, going back as far as a year. I looked for posts where Enid was present and tried to identify any men she was associated with during that time. Then, I froze. There was a man who bore a striking resemblance to Raphael, but younger. His profile revealed that he was Raphael's younger brother. Suddenly, I was in a whirlwind, on the brink of uncovering something, anything. I couldn't pinpoint what was driving me to identify the child's biological father. Perhaps I'm driven by the fear of him falling back into her care, and I can't take him in. Claire has already endured so much, and it's not fair to ask this of her. So I delved deeper into his profile, and everything seemed normal until, bam! Guess what I stumbled upon in one of his photos? Cufflinks. The very same brand that she had stashed away all those years ago. The one she lied about receiving as a gift, and then passed on to me. It was him. I could see the resemblance in the eyes that mirrored Bryce's. I shot him a message, insisting we needed to meet. He was nearby and hurried over as soon as I mentioned it involved Enid. Upon his arrival, his first words were, "What has she done now?" It was as if he was accustomed to her stirring up trouble over the years. I can't say I'm surprised. Enid is like a tempest, leaving destruction in her wake. I laid out the entire story for him, from the beginning to the present. We spent hours discussing all the chaos she'd caused. He revealed that he and his brother had cut ties because of her. I was speechless hearing some of the things he shared. And then came the reason for his visit. Miraculously, I still had the cufflinks. For years, I'd been meaning to discard them, but once they were out of my sight, they slipped my mind. I presented him with the cufflinks and asked if they had been intimate. He confirmed it. Then, I showed him a picture of Bryce, and he didn't deny it. He just nodded solemnly, as if he was coming to terms with it. By this point, I was emotionally drained, weary of the constant anger, betrayal, and sorrow associated with her. He expressed his gratitude for my honesty and then departed. As far as I'm aware, he managed to gain custody of Bryce, and we haven't heard from him since. I sincerely hope this is the final chapter in the Enid saga. I can't handle any more of her drama. And here's your final update. Enid's mom just rang me up. She says Enid was released today and wants to see me. I'm not going. I'm exhausted. I've made the mistake of getting entangled in her web because I wanted to save her from herself. Now I have a wife and a child to look after. Enid is simply a part of my past. Her mom has some nerve. She was aware of what was happening all those years ago and allowed her daughter to vanish from my life. I reached out to her mom incessantly in the initial days until she herself put a block on me. She didn't disclose Enid's whereabouts, just left me in the dark. I don't care what she's saying now. Enid's spiraling out of control and coming to terms with her actions. She needs to face the repercussions of her deeds. I've already granted her forgiveness. This is my revenge.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.